day, all.
Yes,
Good morning.
I am Ceirid Sampson, the bereavement counselor and the assistant customer relations manager with the Belgroves Funeral Home. As we are all aware, the month of October is designated to breast cancer awareness. We thought it vital to engage in conversations as it relates to breast cancer. As part of the funeral home executive, it is important for us to not just assist persons who are dealing with breast cancer, but also show them ways and means in which to cope. That being said, I have invited today with me to join in conversations about breast cancer, Dinna Rajpaul-Bainey. Good morning. And a dear friend of mine, Alinia Samsingh. Both persons would have at some point in time become aware of their being an existence of cancer, either within themselves or within their families. So I thought it only appropriate to have them share with us on this journey. Before we start this morning, I just want to share with you a quote from Hoda Quotes, and he said, "Cancer survivors are blessed with two lives. There's a life before cancer, and there's a life after cancer." I now throw out to you, Mrs. Bainey. Can I ask you, what were some of those early symptoms or early warning signs that led you to your cancer diagnosis?
Absolutely none.
Wow.
I'll just go back a little bit. At the time, I was a principal, and I had a member of staff who was diagnosed, and the staff was journeying with her throughout her period. But prior to that, cancer was nebulous. I mean, I know of people who had cancer who have gone through, but I've never really been exposed. And it's only when that particular person on my staff was diagnosed that, I became really aware of what cancer really is and what it can do. So I didn't know that 2 years afterwards, because she did not survive. And 2 years afterwards, in January of 2010, my daughters went back to university, and it was on the third day after they left Trinidad. I stayed downstairs to watch a movie. My husband went up to sleep, and he fell asleep on the comforter. So when I went up to sleep, I had to pull the comforter from under him to cover myself. And my hand brushed under my left breast, and I felt something. And of course, I flew out of the bed, and I started, checking myself, what it is I felt, and I couldn't feel it. And I persisted, and I actually had to push my hand up. And that's to tell you the force in which I had pulled that comforter for me to feel it. And I felt it. And of course, I panicked immediately. And I woke him up and I said, "Look, I'm feeling something, and I couldn't sleep that night. It was just around midnight. And I got up in the morning and I called a past student who is a doctor, because I understood that her mom had also gone through the problem. And we acted very quickly. She sent me off to do the mammogram. When I did the mammogram, then I had to come back to her with it, and then we discussed, what I should do. She sent me to a surgeon. But before I reach into the process, that particular point in time when I felt that lump, I felt, you just saw death, because that's when you hear about cancer, that's what you think, right? I was not educated in terms of stage, a type of cancer, treatment, nothing like that. So I started to research. But to get back to my feeling, that's how I felt. I felt very, very, I just started to pray, God really, I have to say, God really was with me during that whole, up till now, during that whole scenario. you felt as though it was the end of the world. You're thinking these two children are at university, you know, they still need me. My husband still need me. There's so much I still want to do with my life. And, you know, it was a formidable feeling.
Yeah. And you know, I appreciate you for sharing that. Alinia, share with me your awareness of having or being diagnosed with cancer. How did you come upon, you know, knowing that you had cancer?
Well, funny because I had no symptoms and it was just a regular night and I was playing with my cat and she stepped on it. And when she stepped on it, it hurt. And I rubbed it and then I realized it was a bump. And again, I got up, I panicked. I felt to see what was common in both breasts to see what it was. Nothing was common. It wasn't common in the other breast. So I know something was wrong. So I contacted that was a Friday. Saturday morning early, I contacted my gynecologist. I told her what happened. And she sent me for the ultrasound and then I went forward there.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing. You both have indicated that there were no symptoms. And for
No.
those of us who are not aware and keep thinking that something or something will happen to us to tell us that we have breast cancer, we talk about hypertension being a silent killer. You now have me even looking at breast cancer.
I was a
And
silent killer.
yeah, Alinia, I applaud you in that for you it may have been the early stage, but for some it may not have been that early.
No.
So we talk about the fear that comes out of even that first diagnosis. What does that look like? What does that fear look like?
Honestly, you feel numb. You feel like you have no feeling and you don't know what to feel because all these things come rushing. Like, you know, I have my son, I'm studying. Well, if anything happened to me, what is going to be his situation? You know, I think back so much and it was a bit of fear, it was a bit of everything, you know.
Mrs. Bainey, how has your lifestyle changed now being diagnosed with cancer?
Okay, so as you know, I was a principal and teacher too. A very stressful job. You know, you deal with people all the time, every day, hundreds of people sometimes, not on a daily basis, but during your lifetime, you know. And I really felt that stress is an important factor to take into account with cancer diagnosis, besides your health lifestyle. I can tell you for sure that I never abused my body. We ate healthily, we ate well, you know. What lacked in my life later on after assuming principalship and so on, and especially, and also when the children came, I did not exercise as often as I should. In fact, sometimes not at all, because I just didn't have the time in the day to do it. And so, you know, that really hit me for six, the diagnosis, because I had no recorded history in my family of breast cancer. And, you know, coping with it was difficult in the beginning. But, you know, people who are diagnosed, not everybody is going to handle it in the same way. We all make up differently. Our DNA is so different. I have always been a fighter. And I just talked to my God and I took it from there.
Yeah. And Alinia, the same question is posed to you. Having been diagnosed, how has that changed your life? What do you do differently now?
Okay, well, what I did, I'm doing a lot of research on the things I could be, how to change my diet, things I have to be eating now, things I have to be doing on a regular basis, and I'm just trying to learn about cancer and well, not what causes it, but like how you deal with it, how the diet part of it and everything. And I am trying to follow that.
Mhm. So is there a support system that we can now fall back on, or who is your support system, Mrs. Bainey?
But before we get to the support system, I just wanted to let the audience know that, of course, I did a complete blood work. Absolutely nothing was wrong with me, just cancer. So that was, I think that was that played an important part in my recovery, because once you don't have comorbidities, nothing is wrong with you afterwards. Your body, you are able to come back after that treatment. To get to your question now, this support system, my support system was my husband. As you know, as I said before, my children were not around. And if I think if it wasn't for him, I don't know, what would have happened, because, it's a process that you have to go through: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. It's a long process, and thankfully for him, he has always been there. Because I have two brothers in Trinidad. They live far from me, and my sister lives abroad. So in terms of family, they were not really readily available. And so my husband really was the support for me.
Mhm. Yeah, on having a conversation with Alinia earlier, as much as we focus on breast cancer being common to women, she discovered that that men also, can be diagnosed with breast cancer. And even though statistic has it that it's like 1 out of 100, we don't speak to them at all. It's like, it's just a female breast that can develop a cancer. So Alinia, tell me, how was that awakening for you?
Well, it is because, and then besides men having breast cancer, lately by doing my research, I found out that there are so many other different cancer. You could have cancer anywhere, and then they have the different stages, and then it have aggressive, different ways they will label it. So I think, we all should be reading up and trying to see how much we could educate ourselves about cancer, not only focus on breast cancer, but anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
strange as well. Like I spoke to one or two people, like found out like when they, what were your system? And it was little things they found on their skin. And we should be paying more attention. Sometimes we see little things on our skin and we take it for granted, and not knowing it's just the beginning of some type of cancer just coming up there. So all of that, everybody should be aware of.
Yeah. As much as we are having the conversation about cancer, I applaud you both because you're also educating me. All of a sudden, I feel that there is a need to know more. And so often we wait until it happens to someone close to us to try and find out what this is all about. Mrs. Bainey, do you mind going a little bit more in depth as it relates to your journey with cancer?
Mm-hmm. So after I was diagnosed and I said I did the mammogram and so on, but that was in 2010. And my doctor had sent me to a surgeon, and I listened to what he had to say. He wanted to remove the breast right away. And I was in shock. I mean, I didn't know anything about this thing. Why remove the breast? I needed to know more about this. And I went to, in fact, I visited many doctors before I decided who's going to treat me. So I saw 2 surgeons and I saw 2 oncologists. And after chatting with them, I decided who I felt comfortable with and made that decision with who I'm going with. After I did that, in fact, I saw 3 oncologists, but 2 worked together because one was a radiologist, radiation oncologist, and one was the blood, right? And what I did, because I realized back then doctors were not talking to each other. One was doing their own thing, and then you go see the other one. And I got my doctors talking to each other. And so we had the surgery. And after I had the surgery, I had to be home for 6 weeks. What I did was a lumpectomy because fortunately for me, it was early stage cancer. And so I chose to do, well, when I sat down with one of the oncologists, she gave me all the stats before. She didn't make the decision for me. I had to make the decision myself. So she gave me all the stats. I said, thank God I'm educated, that I could understand all what she was putting up on that screen. And then I made the decision to do a lumpectomy. And so I had the surgery. I made arrangements with the surgeon to do one of the surgeons to do the surgery. And then I took 6 weeks leave to recover. And after that, I went back out to work. And then the chemotherapy started after the healing of that area. The chemotherapy hit me for 6 because I only had to have 4 sessions, but when the first session started, I reacted. I could not breathe. They had to pull off everything off of me. They had to adjust, the doctor had to adjust the rate at which the drug was entering my body. And if that was not going to work, he would have had to change the drug. But prior to that, when back then, I don't know if they were doing the analysis, the biopsy analysis here, but I know I sent mine abroad. And when it came back, that is how the doctor was able to diagnose how he's going to treat me. What I also did was I had a relative in Canada, and he was a doctor, and he had his colleagues who are oncologists. So I sent up everything, all the mammogram, the ultrasound, the CT scan, everything up. And they looked at it, and whatever they diagnosed, whatever regimen they had set out there for me was the exact thing my doctor in Trinidad had done. So I felt comfortable. I didn't feel I had to go abroad. Everything could have been done right here. And so I started as I said, I started the chemo. I had to do it, I think it was once every 3 weeks. But I never stayed home. I did the chemotherapy for 1 week, one day, and I stayed home that week because I really was out of it in that week. And then I went back to work for the other 2 weeks because at the time we didn't have a permanent vice principal at the school. And it's not that I didn't think that the school couldn't run, but I think it was important for all those girls that I was in charge of to see how you can handle adversity when it hits you. And I made the effort. Now I had spoken to the school supervisor at the time. She knew, I can't remember if we had gone through some of them, but she realized, she understood. And I told her I will work until about 1, because around that time I would begin to feel tired, and I would leave at 1 every day. And that's how that continued. After I finished the chemotherapy, well, I had a break, and then the radiation started. I had to do 30 sessions of it. what I did, well, that was another story because they wanted to give, one oncologist wanted to give me brachytherapy and another one wanted to give me the radiation. Brachytherapy meant that they had to go in and put in these pellets or whatever it is in your breast, right? And I prayed about it and I said, you know what, I'm just going to do the external radiation. So I did the external radiation. I had to have 30 sessions, and it so happened the session finished in time for me to go back out to school in September of that year. And I did the CT scan. I was cleared, and it was cool sailing. Well, of course, I was bald after chemotherapy. One of the first things I did was I cut my hair short in a boy cut so that I would, because I usually have my hair like shoulder length, so I would not have been traumatized when all this started to fall, you know. But by December, I had a boy cut. I had something like what I have right now, you know, and I don't know how people wear wigs, but I really struggled with it. I really struggled with it. And so I was glad when I had the boy cut and I was able to stop wearing the wig. So, you know, as you say, you have to watch exactly what you have to eat. I cut down on the amount of meat I eat, red meat and so on. But I always eat a lot of veggies. I always make sure we had a balanced diet, you know. I had a scare again, actually, in December of 2012 when of course, I rigidly did my mammogram and ultrasound every year. And in 2012, I had a scare because a lump appeared in the other breast. And when I did the mammo, I did the biopsy, it was just fatty tissue. What I want to say here is that not always when you feel a lump, it's cancer, because sometimes it's filled with liquid and they just suction it out, you know, or get rid of it. So I can understand the fear because I went through that when you feel it, but you know, give yourself a chance in terms of after you do your mammogram and so on, you know, you may not be so unfortunate. Just to get back to where I digressed a little bit. So from 20 December, I think I did the CT scan in that quarter of that 2010, that the remaining quarter, sometime in there before Christmas, and I was clear and I continued to live my life normally. You know, I didn't, you know, at the back of my mind, I never thought that cancer would not come back, but I prayed that it would not. And God gave me 12 years, you know, I was cancer free. I lived my life. Anybody looked at me would never think I had the cancer. I did a lot in those 12 years. I had the scares, I told you, in December of 2012. And that's when my husband started to ask me, when are you going to retire? And of course, I didn't take him on. He never interfered with my career. He never dictated to me what I had to do and what I shouldn't do. And for him to ask me that, I know it was taking a toll on him, because it's not only us who goes through.
Sure.
People that we are living with who have to stay strong for you as well, you know. And for him to ask me that, I realized it was affecting him.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that you said, not cutting you, you started the conversation by saying cancer is stress related, yes?
Yes, I personally feel that's what happened with me.
Yeah, but here the joke. You say that cancer is stress related. You're working in an environment where there is a certain amount of stress, and yet you choose to remain in that environment because you're looking at not only your journey, but teaching the young people who you associate with how important it is to have to go through this and still be able to cope and still be able to live in the midst of it. So that is very interesting. So until your husband told you that, hey, you need to slow down, as much as he didn't say it in so many words, then you realize that really and truly cancer is not just about me. It's about everyone else who is around me. Yeah, they walk the same journey. And even sometimes so a little bit more fearful because I can't relate to what you're going through. I remember a client of mine telling me that when his wife was diagnosed with cancer, he said, I didn't know what to do. So I felt so helpless. And I left it up to the doctors and they failed me. Because it was totally out of his hands. He really did not know, how can I help my wife? How can I make her better? So I'm giving her all the attention that she needs from the medical profession, and yet she passed. Yeah. Alinia, I'm sharing with you because I know this is early stage for you. I know that you may have some of the experiences that Mrs. Bainey is talking to. How do you feel then? Have you spoken to your doctor about chemotherapy? Have you spoken about what stage are you at in your journey?
Well, from Friday, I'll be starting my first chemotherapy. And they told me I'll have 4 sessions to do, and then we will start the radiation. So after Friday, I'll know how it feels.
Mrs. Bainey, what is she to expect?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what first begin. One thing that was an eye-opener for me when I was first diagnosed, that there's several types of breast cancer. It's not what would work for me will not work for you. What drug worked for me may not work for her. It depends on the type of cancer she was diagnosed with. The treatment will follow that. So the first time I was diagnosed, the cancer I had then is a different cancer to what I had last year. Because you will not, I don't think you're going to get it back twice because you already treated for a certain type of cancer. I don't know. I think so, from what I remember my doctor saying. So that's why I had a different type of cancer this time. So the treatment is different.
Again, a lesson for me. I thought breast cancer was breast cancer. How could you have different types of breast cancer? Yeah, really an eye-opener. So based on statistics, they are saying that persons who could be diagnosed with breast cancer could be ladies over the age of 40. Do we know of anyone younger than 40 who would have been diagnosed seriously?
I had students, I had students diagnosed with cancer.
And as you rightfully say, there are different types of breast cancer. They say that cancer is also related to the use of hormones. It's also related to the fact, for ladies, when they start their menstrual cycle or when their menstrual cycle ends. So how do we beat this thing? Because we all go through this.
And it also can be genetic,
As well.
Yeah.
But you're saying genetic, and you were the first one in your family to be diagnosed, yes, with cancer?
Yes. As far as I know, as far as I know.
Yeah.
At the time, I should say.
So then there must have been something within the family that you weren't aware of. I
don't know if it's genetic. I don't know. I really don't know if it's genetic. But my take on it is that, if cancer come like a common cold, no.
Wow.
To me, every other person you talk to, they know someone who has been diagnosed. I mean, it is crazy, especially in the last year. The amount of people I have known who have, who got it. It is just amazing, So if you get it, you deal with it. Like every other thing in your life, you have to deal with it. Unfortunately, for some of us, we are not diagnosed until it's sometimes too late, you know. But I have heard of people who had stage 4 cancer and have survived, you know. So
Yeah.
it's important. You know what? For me, I embrace my illness. And I remember coming down the steps one morning and I watched my husband. He was at the bottom of the stairs and I looked at him and I said, you know what? And this was before I even started any treatment back then. I said, you know what? Cancer is not going to kill me. I am going to fight this. And with that attitude, that is how I went forward with it, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, not everybody have that kind of makeup. You know, if you're tough and you're a fighter, you can. And as I tell you, on both occasions, it's divine intervention.
Yeah.
Because
You know, and as you said that, you know, as you said that, so often people rarely see cancer as a death sentence.
Yeah.
All you have to know is, hey, you have cancer, and you start thinking negative thoughts. When am I going to die? How long do I have to live? Where did I get it from? What did I do wrong? Not realizing that we can beat this. You know, so having opened that door, I want to speak to the emotions associated with cancer. Alinia, was your first emotion that of being overwhelmed, or was it that you were angry?
As I said earlier on, it was a mixed feelings. It was sad. You start to overthink. You start to think beyond how bad it is. Have it spread? What stage have it spread? You know, how is it going to affect my family? If it's, every different questions popped in my head.
Yeah.
Where was God in all of this?
Yeah, I know, and I ask myself that, right? Because I keep asking myself, I say, God, why, why me? Why this?
You'll
And
find the answer later on.
but strange enough, this was always a fear I had of getting. I always pray and say, Lord, don't ever let me get this cancer.
Yeah.
But it happened like this.
So, you know, I'm going to come back to the emotions, but just to address your conversation with God, know that in the midst of everything, it's a lesson He wants you to share with someone else. He's not putting you through this because it's not I'm doing you something. It is I want you to see the bigger picture. There are people out there who want to hear about your journey to be healed themselves. Yes. So use it as on a positive note. I know it's easier said than done, but there is a bigger picture. And ask in the midst of all that you're doing, show me the bigger picture. How can I use this to help others? Yeah, Mrs. Bainey, you'd like to add?
Well, you know, in the beginning, I didn't want to share anything with anybody. I was just concerned about getting myself well. And then even afterwards, you have to be careful when you're talking to other cancer patients because you don't want to impart anything to them that can affect them, you know, because as I said, everybody cancer is different, everybody treatment is different, and what worked for you may not work for somebody else. But if you can give them moral support, emotional support, I said yes. But I would never like how I'm talking about my treatment here. This is the first time I'm doing this publicly. I would never do that because, you know, you don't want to give people false hopes, you know. You can listen to them. Listening is so important. Listen to them, listen to God, you know. But I always think that you have to be careful when you are talking to somebody, you know. What your conversation should really be about giving them hope, rather than discussing treatment.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if I'm asked now, well, how did you go, the process, I will share that. I will now share that process. But I would never advise. I don't think I should do that, you know.
So you're saying then that there is hope in the midst of being diagnosed with cancer.
Of course.
How do I even begin to relate to that, coming out of a place of probably not even understanding or being able to admit to myself that this is my diagnosis? How do I see hope? What does hope look like?
Yeah. Hope looks like, well, I'm a Catholic. Hope for me is the Lord's Prayer. And it is a universal prayer because even non-Christians in this country know that prayer. And when I became really aware of the depth of that common prayer that God gave us, a member of my staff gave me a book called Cancer and the Lord's Prayer. And I would recommend the book, whether you're Christian or not. You know, it's by Greg Anderson. And he tells about his journey with this prayer. And he took a chapter was based on everything. Our Father. All right. Our Father, it means whether you call him whatever, it's our Father. And it's not my Father. It's everybody's Father. So that's the importance of praying for everybody. So even though I was going through my own, you know, I remember once after I was diagnosed and I'm driving and I'm looking at the woman in the cars and I'm saying, what if she had breast cancer? You know, you look at people and you wonder what everybody is going through because you don't know, you know. And it was such a sudden awareness that people are moving around and you really don't know what they are carrying. And so when you pray for everybody, you know, especially like people who are, you know, who have been diagnosed. So that, you know, so you say, our Father, who art in heaven, and he took each piece and he did a chapter in it. And up till now I read it, you know, it's at my bedside, you know, because it's such that's what hope is all about.
Yes.
You know, that is what hope is all about.
Yeah. You know, one of the things we mentioned was the fear and the worry that comes with being diagnosed, you know, and I would be the first one to admit I have that fear and worry. I'm afraid of checking. I kid you not. I'm afraid of checking as much as, you know, I'm afraid of finding out. Fear keeps us back from so many things, from being inclusive of so many things. But because I started this conversation, I thought it necessary to check. So I checked. So I want persons who are listening, not just to listen to the conversation, but to eliminate that fear and check themselves as well. You know, that was a real eye opener for me just now when you said, Mrs. Bainey, you're driving around and you're wondering, does she have cancer? Does she have cancer? Because nobody thinks it can happen to them. And we sometimes go through a sense of guilt, having not checked, having not known sooner, because we were too ignorant to the fact that, hey, this could be you. So I applaud you, Alinia, for bringing this to my attention because I would not have checked. Sometimes it comes that close to home. And you have to realize, hey, this may not just be a lesson for the person, but it may also be a lesson for you.
Right.
Yeah. So let's eliminate that fear and face what we have to go through if this is the case. It is better to know and be able to do something about it than not know and end up being a statistic. Yeah. There's also sadness and depression that comes with cancer. Mrs. Bainey, I know you spoke about the loss of hair, and I don't know the type of cancer. Now I could say that the type of breast cancer that you may have, Alinia, but when the sadness comes, the only person you can talk to is God. When the depression comes, the only person you could talk to is God. You may find that you're speaking to someone who is willing to hear your story, but not concerned about you. It's more about finding out, you have breast cancer, what happened with you? And it's not that they want to contribute to your existence. So be mindful to talk to persons who are interested in you, interested in your journey. Yeah, Mrs. Bainey.
I just want to go back to what you were saying about checking. I mean, you must check, but especially after being diagnosed and you're given the green light, make sure that you check every single year. I checked every single year. I did my blood work twice a year. COVID came and I skipped 1 year. Skipped 1 year in terms of the blood work, not the mammogram. Because as I told you, it came back last year, 2022. I had my mammogram done in July, I think it was, July, August of 2021, but I did not do my blood work in 2022. My elder daughter got married. We went for her wedding. She got married abroad. And when I came back, just within a week, I stood in front of the mirror and I looked at the breast and it came back in the same breast. And when I looked at the breast, I said, but this looks funny. And I started to, and I felt this thing. And I promptly went back and did the mammogram. And while I was doing the mammogram, I could tell because I saw it on the screen and I could tell when they asked me to come back into the room and they want to do over the shot, I knew right there and then that it was something to be concerned about. So I never skip a mammogram, but it's good to check, make sure you do your blood work as well, I know of someone who missed 1 year and it was detrimental for her because it missed 1 year in terms of her mammogram. And it was detrimental to her, so it's important. And, sometimes you do it. It was less than a year, 9 months. And it wasn't there before, the year before, but it appeared, in the next year. Within 1 year, anything can happen.
So you're saying then whether or not you have been diagnosed, it's important to do those mammograms
every year.
Yeah. I was laughing at a client the other day who told me, she says, I don't have breast, so I can't have breast cancer. And I think that is such a myth. Because it doesn't mean because you're not heavily breasted that you can't have breast cancer.
Yeah, it doesn't have nothing to do with your size.
Yeah, that is so true. So it's really an awareness. It's really finding hope in midst of the diagnosis and knowing how to continue to live in spite of. To enjoy what you do, to try and eat better, to try and do better,
and to live.
Live
life.
Cancer, being diagnosed with cancer.
It's so important how you present yourself, because even now when I go out there, people say, you have cancer. They wouldn't think that I have cancer, because even when I was sick, I'm not going out. But you see, it was also now COVID, receding, right? I was still very careful about where I go and so on. But even if I'm stepping out of the house, I always make sure, and I suppose it's the home you grew up in. I grew up in a home where my parents were always well dressed. We're always going out, they always put together. So I grew up in that. So when I'm leaving the house, I'm always put together. you know, very rare I would go out looking anyhow. So even though I am ill, I still try to keep myself up and have that positive, or you know, approach to whatever I'm going to do.
Yeah, and I think that alone is it helps you in the fight against cancer because your thoughts are positive. I can do this. I can beat this. Look at me. Because people seem to think that cancer has a look, cancer has an appearance. This is look at her, she have cancer. How the hell do you know? Yeah. So you know, we have to be mindful that our mind plays such an important part in our healing process. Yeah. If we think it, it will happen. If you sit back there and you tell yourself that cancer is a death sentence, that's exactly going to be the outcome. But if you say, I can fight this, and remember, it's not you alone fighting, it is you and God. We're nothing without him. Right?
Yeah.
So this is not you fighting it, it's me and this person who's in charge of me, who's in charge of me waking up in the morning, who's in charge of me doing better, who's in charge of me being better. Yeah, but think positive thoughts. Think, even if at the end of the day you are diagnosed a second time, know that it could have been worse if you did not think those positive thoughts, if you did not have that positive outlook on what is happening to you. And even though we're talking breast cancer, and the awareness, know that it's not just about the female. It's also about the male. How do we bring an awareness to them? I know there is support within the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society. Mrs. Bainey, can you speak to that as it relates to support?
I have not reached out to the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society. It's something that was always at the back of my mind. I would like to. It's just that I have been so busy. That's another thing. Even though I have retired, I never sat down. I was home for a year. I did things in the house that I had put on the back shelf during my career, and I tried to get certain things done in that year. And then after 1 year, I realized I can't stay home. So I went back out to work. I got a job with the church, and I worked for about 5 years, I think. And then I decided to permanently retire in 2019 at once. And then I got involved with Rotary. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of San Fernando, and that really brings great satisfaction for me. It provided me with the opportunity to go out there and meet people from different communities. See, there are people suffering more than you.
Sure.
Cancer that you are having, you know, and it gives you the opportunity to help those who are really in need. And to me, community service is not about going and give a hamper and then turn your back. To me, it's engaging the people,
giving of yourself.
Yes, going back and look for them, find out how they're going, you know, that kind of thing. You may not be physically present, but a phone call will do, you know.
Sure.
To me, that is the important thing. That gives me great satisfaction. And it's also what Rotary did. I'm not that I'm plugging for Rotary here, but I'm just telling you how I'm dealing with it.
Yes.
It gave me, I was a teacher. I love working with young people. And so Rotary also provided me the opportunity to give back to the youths, because at the moment I hold the position of youth service chair, and Rotary does have several youth arms, and one of them is the Interact clubs in some schools. We have 5 sponsored schools that God give me the avenue to work with the young people. So it keeps me young, interacting with them, you know, keep me abreast with whatever is going on in education. And I never stop learning, you know, but whatever it is, I read a lot, you know, I keep my mind active. And so I don't have time to think about cancer.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Awesome.
I did an amazing thing. to me, it wasn't amazing, but to other people, it's amazing. But I'm not ready to divulge what I did during my year of illness. But, you know, when I was ill, I was ill. And when I felt good, I did what I had to do, you know. And it has come to fruition. And one day maybe I'll share with you what that is.
Thank you. I'm going to end this session now, and I thank you both for sharing with me, coming from the heart. For the general public, I just want to say that in the war against cancer, arming yourself with knowledge and education is the most powerful tool you could ever have. Yeah, by taking action and doing something positive, fear will be replaced with hope.
Yes.
On behalf of the Belgroves group, because we do more than just say we care, I ask you, when last did you check? Pleasantly.
Thank you so much.